Hello and welcome to one and all. In today's class, we will see the next theory of consumer behavior, which is based on the ordinal utility analysis. That is the indifference curve analysis. Okay. So in the previous class, we discussed about the law of equimarginal utility and earlier the law of diminishing marginal utility. And I explained to you also those two laws were based on the cardinal utility analysis. That is, the consumer can measure the satisfaction in cardinal numbers after consuming a particular units of commodity. But according to some of the economists, it is not possible to measure the satisfaction derived by the consumer after consuming certain quantities of commodities. So, at the most, what the consumer can do, he can only express his preferences. This commodity is my first preference, commodity X is my first preference, commodity Y is my second preference, and so on. So, some of the economists felt that it is really not possible for a consumer to measure the satisfaction in terms of cardinal numbers. They can only rank their preferences and they can arrange the preferences according to the priority, which is what is known as scale of preferences. So it is not possible to measure the satisfaction cardinally. So as an alternative approach to the cardinal utility analysis, some of the economists, especially Hicks and Allen, so they developed a theory known as the indifference curve analysis, which is based on the ordinal utility approach. So this is an alternative theory to cardinal utility analysis. Okay, in 1939. So they gave their world version of consumer behavior through the indifference curve analysis. Now, as per the indifference curve analysis, as I mentioned, the consumer can express its preferences over a set of combinations of commodities. That is, so indifference curve analysis states that the consumer has normally a certain preferences. See, normally we all have certain priorities, isn't it? This is one. Some commodities we like, some commodities we might not like that much. Some commodities we don't like at all. So, like that, we have certain preferences in our mind, isn't it? A certain set of preferences over a set, or what you call as a combination. Combinations of two or more commodities. But in our example, we are taking only two commodities because it is mentioned in a two-dimensional chart. But as I mentioned earlier also, these two commodities, the same thing is applicable to any number of commodities we are consuming. More commodities. And what we, at the most, what the consumer can do, he or she can only rank, this is the main thing, rank them accordingly. See, for example, if the consumer has got certain preferences like mangoes, first preference, bananas, second preference, apples, third preference, oranges, fourth preference. So like that, consumer can rank his choices of goods in first, second, third, and all. This is the ordinal numbers. And if the consumer is able to arrange his preferences according to the priorities, so like first, second, third, and fourth. So this is what is known as the scale of preferences. So if we are able to arrange our choices of goods according to our priorities, according to our preferences, then we are making a scale of preferences. So as per this analysis, every consumer has got a definite scale of preference where he or she can arrange his choice of commodities and give them the numbers in the ordinal numbers like first preference, second preference, third preference, etc. Okay. So so the entire indifference curve analysis is based on this ranking or the scale of preferences, or which is based on the ordinal utility analysis. So this is given by the later economists, especially developed by Hicks and Allen, because of the shortcomings of the cardinal utility analysis. As I mentioned, mainly the consumer cannot measure the satisfaction in terms of cardinal numbers. Okay. So before I proceed to explain what exactly how indifference curve analysis explains the consumer behavior, just let me explain the concept clearly. Okay. So let us take an hypothetical example. So a kid named Dolly. Okay. So Dolly has two preferences. Again, for the sake of convenience, we are taking two commodities. So Dolly likes comic books and Barbie dolls. Okay. So now let us, normally in the actual practice, no consumer would like to have only one commodity, isn't it? We all like to have different varieties of commodities. So in our consumption basket, we want to put different varieties of commodities. So again, as I mentioned, we are taking in that consumption basket. In Dolly's consumption basket, let us take two commodities, comic books and Barbie dolls. Maybe she likes more, but then with the example of two commodities, it is applicable to all the other commodities. So irrespective of the number of, or the quantities of comic books and quantities of the Barbie dolls, let us see what is the satisfaction she is going to receive with this combination of comic books and Barbie dolls. Okay. So initially Dolly has, let us assume, one Barbie doll and 15 comic books. So with this amount of, this is her consumption basket. In her consumption basket, she is having one Barbie doll and 15 comic books. So this combination of these two commodities is going to give a certain level of satisfaction to Dolly. So let us call it as X. So this X is the whatever the satisfaction which she is receiving after having one Barbie doll and 15 comic books. A certain amount of satisfaction she is receiving. So let us call it as X. Okay. Now this is according to whatever the circumstances, the money income, whatever the availability of goods and services, and based on the money income, etc. So this is one combination, one Barbie doll and 15 comic books. Suppose if the situation changes, if the money income increases, or the circumstances, availability of the commodities increases, there are so many other factors, isn't it? So in another situation, maybe she's having, this is first situation. Second situation is, first situation, then second situation. So there's another possibility. Two Barbie dolls. She might have, not necessary, she has only one Barbie doll and 15 comic books. So it might be possible that she is having two Barbie dolls and maybe more number of comic books if the money income is really more, or that particular kind of commodities are available freely in the market, freely in the sense that without any shortage. 18 comic books. This is another situation. So this is giving again another certain amount of satisfaction. Let us name it as Y. Okay. So it might be third situation. Four Barbie dolls and 23 comic books. So this is going to give her a certain level of satisfaction. Let us name it as like that. It keeps on going. Okay. So under the given circumstances, a certain combination of two goods is giving a certain level of satisfaction to the consumer. Okay. So as the income increases, as the circumstances changes, the satisfaction level will also keep on changing. Okay. Now let us take the first situation where the our consumer Dolly, she's having 15 comic books and one Barbie doll. So with meaning what? With the available money income and with whatever the circumstances she's in now, she can afford 15 comic books and one Barbie doll, and which is giving a certain amount of satisfaction, which is equivalent to X. Okay. Now we ask Dolly that like we'll give her one more Barbie doll. So in order to get one more Barbie doll, how many units of comic books she will sacrifice? So she says that so that this total satisfaction, whatever the satisfaction which is receiving, one Barbie doll and 15 comic books, this satisfaction should remain the same. So without disturbing the satisfaction, obviously no consumer would like to exchange any commodity, trade off any commodity. Under the circumstances, the satisfaction is going to decrease, isn't it? So they will see to it that they will make all possible combinations between the quantities of these two commodities in such a way that the satisfaction is remaining the same. So we are asking how many comic books she will exchange in order to get one more Barbie doll. So let us assume she finds she can have one more Barbie doll, that is two Barbie dolls, and she will sacrifice 4 units of comic books. So 11 comic books. So she is willing to, that means what? She is willing to sacrifice 4 comic books in exchange for another Barbie doll, so that her satisfaction is remaining the same. So the satisfaction, if she has to maintain the same level of satisfaction, she is willing to exchange 4 comic books in exchange of one more Barbie doll. Now the question arises, why she has to sacrifice certain amount of comic books? As I mentioned that it is under the given circumstances, under the current level of money income, which every consumer is having the same problem, they can purchase one more unit of another commodity only by sacrificing the whatever the commodities they are having. So right from the beginning we have been seeing this: means are unlimited and wants are means are limited and wants are unlimited, and people have to make a choice, isn't it? So if the consumer has to purchase one more unit of any particular commodity, he has to sacrifice, forego whatever the commodity he is having. So with that, or to put it very simply, your money income is limited. You cannot purchase more quantities of every commodity, isn't it? So if you want to purchase one more unit of any particular commodity, another commodity you have to decrease. So that is the restriction all of us are having. So she's willing to sacrifice 4 comic books in order to get one more Barbie doll. So like that, now this is now what we are having. This is one combination. So the first one Barbie doll and 15 comic books, that this is one combination. Now with this one we are getting the second combination, where irrespective of the quantities, where this total satisfaction is remaining the same. So like that you can keep on having different combinations. So now she is having a set of combinations. Okay, so later maybe in order to have the third combination maybe. So let us move on to the third combination, where 3 Barbie dolls and she is willing to sacrifice, say, 9 comic books. So in other words, she's willing to sacrifice 2 comic books for one more Barbie doll. So like that, again, she finds that in this situation, her satisfaction is going to remain the same. So like that, we have different combinations. So what we are finding in all this total satisfaction is remaining the same. It's remain in X. So how many, irrespective of the quantities of the commodities, differences in the quantities of each one of these commodities, X and Y, the total satisfaction is remaining the same. So that is the way normally the consumer would like to trade off one commodity for another commodity. So now what is happening that here let us take the first two combination. Now what is happening, since one Barbie doll and 15 comic books and two Barbie dolls and 11 comic books is both these combinations are giving the same level of satisfaction, Dolly doesn't mind picking up either the first one or the second one, isn't it? As long as the satisfaction remains the same, the consumer doesn't mind picking up of any one of the combination of two goods. So that's why the consumer is indifferent. Dolly is indifferent here. She doesn't mind either combination 1 or combination 2. She's indifferent to any one of these combinations. See, if she says that I want only 15 comic books, I want and one Barbie doll, I don't want to reduce my comic books. At the maximum, I will always want to have more amount of comic books. Then if she's able to say that clearly, then that is preference, strong preference. But here she's not able to say I don't mind sacrificing such an amount of comic books in order to have one more Barbie doll. So her preference is like that. So she's indifferent. I mean, she's not preferring any one combination strongly. So this is a weak preference. Okay. So because of this, she's indifferent to any one of these combinations, meaning she doesn't mind combination 1 or she doesn't mind combination 2. That's why she's indifferent to combination 1 and combination 2. That is why it is called as the indifference curve analysis. Okay, so this is the basic concept. So this concept, we are expressing it in the form of a table and we are expressing it in the form of a diagram. Okay, so that's the indifference curve schedule and indifference curve analysis. Okay, now let us move on to the, hope the concept is clear. So let me explain to you with the proper table and diagram. So let me explain this with the help of a schedule. Schedule is the table. First, let me explain the table, then I will write the meaning. Once I explain the table, you will be able to understand. If whatever we have mentioned, if the Dolly's preferences of different combinations, if those combinations are mentioned in expressed in the top form of a table, then that is what is called as the indifference schedule. Okay. So now the first column we are having combinations. Second column commodity X. So we have taken Barbie dolls. Third column commodity Y. So in our example, it happens to be comic books. Fourth column, what is the level of satisfaction? And the fifth column, there is something called as the marginal rate of substitution, that is MRS, of X for Y. Okay, so now let's start with the first combination. So one Barbie doll plus 15 comic books. Second combination, two Barbie dolls and 11 comic books. So like that, doll is picking up her different combinations. So this is giving a certain level of satisfaction. Okay, let us have Z as the satisfaction. Okay, and the satisfaction remains the same. So 3 Barbie dolls, and she is willing to give up 3 units of comic books, and 4 Barbie dolls, 6 and 5 plus. So these are all the combinations she's picking up where her total satisfaction is remaining. So all these are remaining constant. The total satisfaction is not changing. Okay. Now, the thing, what you are finding here, initially she's willing to, so here there is nothing. Initially, she's willing to sacrifice 4 units of comic books for one additional Barbie doll. So 4:1. And later on, you find that the number of comic books she's willing to sacrifice keeps on decreasing. And later, she's willing to sacrifice only 3 comic books for one additional Barbie doll. And later, still it decreases to, she's willing to sacrifice only 2 comic books for one more additional Barbie doll. And still it further decreases to 1:1. Okay. So this is what is the marginal rate of substitution. So this is expressed in the form of a table, and as I mentioned, the satisfaction remains the same for Dolly. So this is common for each and every consumer. Okay. Now let me put it in words. What is that indifference curve schedule? So indifference curve schedule expresses the combinations or let me make it the different combinations of 2 goods which is giving the same level of satisfaction irrespective of their quantity. It is not necessary 15 Barbie dolls and 15 comic books. So it should not necessary that it has to be equal. So the quantities of each and every commodity X and Y might differ. Okay. So irrespective of the quantities, same level of satisfaction to the consumer, and it is represented in the form of a table, in the form of a schedule or table. Okay, so whatever we have drawn just now, that is the indifferent schedule. So it's experiment different combinations of 2 goods. That's what we have seen, isn't it? Which is giving the same highlight of the same level of satisfaction to the consumer, and we have represented in the form of a schedule or a table. Okay. Now, what we have, the last column I mentioned to you something called as the first column. We mentioned the so explaining the table. First column I have represented the combinations of 2 goods, isn't it? So combinations of 2 goods. Second column, commodity X. So if you want, you can mention the whatever the example we have taken. Third column, commodity Y. That is comic books. Fourth column, level of satisfaction is at which remains the same or constant, which remains same or constant. This is the main thing in indifference curve. All the combinations should give the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. And fifth column represents the marginal rate of substitution. Okay. So let me explain to you clearly what is this marginal rate of substitution. So what have we found in that table? How many units of commodity Y the consumer is willing to sacrifice for one additional unit of commodity X. So if you see that the rate at which Dolly wants to sacrifice the comic books keeps on decreasing. Okay. So MRS is the marginal rate of substitution, which means that is the rate at which the consumer wants to substitute one good for another. Isn't it? So she's substituting Barbie doll for comic books. This is marginal rate of MRS of X for Y. For another, and again the one of the most important feature of this is, and this MRS, the marginal rate of substitution, keeps on decreasing, diminishing or decreasing. This is the decreasing marginal rate of substitution is the base for indifference curve analysis. Now, why the marginal rate of substitution keeps? There are two reasons for the marginal rate of substitution to decrease. See, for example, if one reason is if more and more of comic books she wants to, she's giving up, automatically she feels like giving up lesser and lesser of comic books. So this is a normal human psychology. If you have more of one commodity, your satisfaction is less. But if you start having lesser and lesser of that particular commodity, then automatically you will want to have more of that particular commodity. So since Dolly feels that for every additional Barbie doll, she has to give up certain amount of comic books. So over a period of time, she doesn't want to give that much amount, to give up that much amount of comic books. Initially, she was willing to give 4 books, but later on, she feels that for every additional unit, she has to keep on giving up comic books. So indirectly, she feels that psychologically, she feels that she wants more of that comic book. So slowly, then only her satisfaction will remain the same. So slowly, she wants to trade off only lesser and lesser amount of comic books for every additional unit of Barbie doll. That is one thing. And on the top of it, if you are getting more and more of a particular commodity, the satisfaction will keep on decreasing. So she feels that every additional Barbie doll is giving her lesser and lesser satisfaction. So why should she give up more and more of comic books for that? So suddenly, over a period of time, she feels that comic books are giving more satisfaction compared to the what do you say, the Barbie dolls. So the same principle, the law of equimarginal utility we have seen, isn't it? That the commodity, if you have the commodity marginal utility of commodity X, we are comparing the marginal utility of commodity Y. So if you feel that marginal utility of commodity X is giving more satisfaction, so you're substituting. So initially she felt that Barbie doll, this is a normal human psychology. So initially Dolly felt that the Barbie doll is giving more amount of satisfaction. She wanted to substitute. So now when the quantity of X, quantity of Barbie doll increases, then automatically The marginal utility of commodity X is decreasing. Now quantity of Y is decreasing. Alternatively, the marginal utility of Y will increase. So when this satisfaction keeps on increasing, then when the marginal utility of Barbie dolls keeps on decreasing, why should she give up more and more units of comic books, for which she finds the satisfaction increasing? So that's normal human psychology. Okay. So because of that reason, she doesn't want to give up more and more units of Barbie dolls. For every additional unit of Barbie doll, she doesn't want to give up more and more units of comic books. Okay. And also, Barbie dolls and comics book, they both are not perfect substitutes. So in normal practice, we don't find any commodity as a perfect substitute. For example, in other words, to put it in words, the marginal rate of substitution keeps on decreasing for two reasons. So one is, as the quantity of good Y decreases, the satisfaction increases. So alternatively, as the quantity of good X increases, the satisfaction decreases. So hence, the consumer will be unwilling to give up more and more units of good Y. Okay. And another reason is, no two commodities are perfect substitutes, or perfect substitutes. So if suppose if Barbie doll and comic books are perfect substitute, that means for every one additional unit of Barbie doll, she has to give up one comic book. One more, two Barbie dolls equals two comic books. Three Barbie dolls equals three comic books. Then it will be matched equally. But is Barbie doll and comics, are they both perfect substitutes? No, isn't it? So that's why if it is a perfect substitute, it will be a straight line. The indifference curve will be a straight line. But in actual practice, no two commodities are perfect substitutes. So it will remain in a convex to the, this is the shape of the indifference curve, not this. This happens for this is a straight line. The indifference curve will be in the form of a straight line. This happens if two commodities are perfect substitutes. But this is not happening. This is for if two commodities are perfect substitutes, then indifference curve will be a straight line. But the shape, this is the shape of the indifference curve, because no two commodities are perfect substitutes. Okay, so which I will explain to you in my next class. This is when I will explaining the diagram, then you will be able to understand what is the shape of the indifference curve. Okay, so hope at least up to here it is clear. So in my next class, I will explain to you the diagrammatic representation of indifference curve, and what is the formula for the marginal rate of substitution, and how the consumer will attain the equilibrium position. Okay, so hope this class is clear to you. If you find this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any doubts, please don't fail to mention in the comment box. Okay, so until my next class, take care. Bye bye.